There was a time back in the day when I started to use solo string libraries where I was initially kind of blown away at the realism. But at the end of the day, I always seemed to want to bury them in the mix and throw a bunch of stuff in there so they kind of peek out because they just weren't quite real enough. I feel like for a lot of instruments, sampling has really been able to come excessively close to matching the realism in terms of sound and playability. But solo instruments have always been another beast entirely. But in comes Sonixinema with their Heritage Cello, and I gotta say that I'm pretty blown away by the realism of this library. Coming in at just under a whopping 45 gigabytes, it has 10 juicy articulations. The legato is absolutely gorgeous. Nearly 2 years in the making, it was recorded at the Nave with famous cellist Nicholas Trigstad. But alas, how does it sound? Let's dive into the interface. There's a lot to get through. I'm going to do my very best to go through each and every functionality of the interface. There's always something that I miss, but at the end of the day, you'll have a really good sense of what this library is all about. So if you have other libraries from Sonixinema, you're going to probably recognize the look of this. We have our articulations at the top, 10 articulations. Over here, we can move the key switches around. If you see at the bottom of the screen in the pink and the green, you'll see those bad boys moving around. So depending on the size of your keyboard, you might want to move those around. You'll also notice that they'll be changed here as well. We're going to go through all the main stuff first, and then we'll come back to the articulations, and I'm going to play each one of them for you so you can hear what it sounds like. We have our global controls. So we have our proximity slider, which moves from close to far. We have high pass and low pass filter. We have stereo field. We have expression and dynamics, which I have mapped to my controllers. Dynamics will be automatically mapped to your mod wheel, but you can assign it to whatever faders you like. Let's do a quick demo of that. It's kind of an art form unto itself, getting used to playing with faders, but once you do, it's like you can't stop doing it. If we click on the mix window, proximity slider is exactly the same, so you can control it here. It's a quick fix to get a close versus far sound. If you want a more detailed mix, you have your close, mid, far, and ambient mics that you can dial in. You also have another slider over here, which I believe is in an engineered mix that you can dial in if you would like. Over here, you have your effects, reverb, tape, delay. You get your tempo sync. These are your reverbs to choose from. And then on this next panel, you have your EQ controls. The second page, just an info about credits, tech specs. There'll be some designed snapshots. And then for each one of the articulations, they'll have both a clean and a wet. Now let's get to the fun part. We have our articulations. There is a lot going on in these boxes. We got some stereo panning here. Top right corner, you can actually switch your round robin, so it'll fire a different sample. In this cog wheel, we got a whole bunch of stuff going on. We got a high pass filter. We have infinite bowing. It can be very useful in the sustained and harmonic articulations, and you don't want to get that bow noise in there. We have a sample purge, which could be handy because we're just over 3.5 gigs of RAM preload, so it is a juicy library. You have the ability to control the tightness depending on if you're playing something a little bit faster, you want to adjust that. There's a tuning control. This slider will control the intensity of the legato transitions. Let me give you an example. We'll keep it all the way down at the bottom there, and then I'll slide it up. So as you can hear, there's just more of like an attack on the notes. I personally prefer the really intense transitions. It just seems like a more natural kind of sound to me. Legato velocity split. This will give you some finer detailed controls of how the legato responds to playing velocity. The dynamics velocity split, I'll show you what this does, but let's move over to the sustain patch. This will control the entrance of the samples and how hard you have to press the keys to get a more aggressive vibrato. So if we dial it all the way to the left, I was pressing the keys with equal velocity. You can hear as you slide it to the right, you'll get a much softer entrance into the samples. So lots of really good fine control. For each of those articulations, you're going to have this little cogwheel option that you can go in and you can mess around with. Before I jump in and demonstrate each of the articulations, there's a few other things that I wanted to demonstrate. One is the infinite bow. So we're going to do that on the sustained articulation. And what I'll do is I'll go back and forth so you can hear the difference between the two. Sometimes what happens with sustained articulations is that bow change just kind of goes in a place that you don't really want it to, and you don't have any control over that. So by selecting infinite bow, you don't have to worry about that, and then you can just adjust it with the expression and dynamics and kind of fade it in and fade it out. The other thing that's pretty cool is their rebowing. So that can be done via this key switch down here, which is highlighted in green, or you can use the sustain pedal. This would be if you're playing 2 consecutive notes. Let me play a couple C's without the rebow, and you hear what it sounds like. It sounds extremely unnatural. Now I'm going to play 2 in a row, but this time I'm going to use my sustain pedal, and you can hear the difference. Now it sounds like for the next note, the bow is transitioning. Very cool. I like this a lot, and having it assigned to the sustain pedal is super cool. Just because I'm not a key switch guy, I hate key switches. I love the fact that they're included in libraries. I've never liked or enjoyed using them. Lastly, what I wanted to show you is that you can shift click, choose multiple articulations. So I'll choose the sustain, and I'm going to shift click, and I'm going to add the harmonics. One other thing I forgot to mention is that once you do shift click and select multiple articulations, these sliders will be able to dial in your volume so you can get the nice balance. Probably notice halfway through playing the passage, because the sustain is such a stronger articulation, it was kind of burying the harmonics. So I just brought that down, and then suddenly you can hear it. Let me turn off the mic. I'm going to run you through some of these articulations. I'll show you what I did in the composition. One thing I forgot to mention with the trills is that they are only active as either minor seconds or major seconds. Real quick before we move on, I'm just going to demonstrate the clean sound for legato so you can hear what that might sound like. I think that'll give you a really good indication of the wet versus very, very dry sound. So it can do both. Reverb is not baked in with this one. I'm going to dial the reverb back like all the way and push it all the way close. Let's hear what that sounds like. So as you can hear, bone dry, and actually it still sounds bloody good. Normally I hate listening to dry samples. What I really wanted to demonstrate in this composition is the range of the cello sound, and I also didn't want it to be buried in the mix. I really wanted to put it up front. I color coded all these, but these are all heritage cello, the whole composition, except for I added one sub hit at the end. So we have the legato, harmonics, tasto, sustain, staccato, pizzicato, and the tremolo right at the very end. As you can see, the whole opening part of the composition is literally just the legato, the little harmonics pan slightly to the left, and tasto slightly to the right. As you can tell, I was not hiding this sample. This was like, let's load it up right up front. And then in the second part of the composition, I want to demonstrate the higher range of the cello, so we move up a little bit higher. Let's play a couple of these other parts. We have a sustain. Okay, let's check out the staccato. Just a little ostinato part, and then I layered the spiccato and pizzicato together. I like that combination a lot. And then we have the tremolo right at the very end. Let's listen to that. This cello library is going to be very difficult to beat. This is one of the most usable, authentic sounding cellos I have ever heard. Almost has like a singing quality. Very, very playable straight out of the box. You have all kinds of ability to tweak it. It can go bone dry. You have all of the key articulations. The shorts are fantastic. I love the harmonics. The legato is absolutely stunning. I'm pretty blown away with it. I really think Sonixinema has raised the bar for solo string sampling with this one. And it's just the one thing that I know that people look for in solo libraries, which is not here, which is a separate, distinct vibrato controller, so that you can play the sounds both with and without vibrato and dial it up. For me, this is not a deal breaker because I think it sounds beautiful just on its own. I know for some people are going to say, man, I really want that feature. I would say this is like a 9.5 out of 10. If you had the vibrato feature, it would be a 10 out of 10. So there you have it, my friends. Go forth, write some beautiful cello music. We'll catch you in the next one.